I knew obviously like the combine was this week. I had never paid attention to when Duke Tobin was going to be actually officially addressing the media, and he hit the ground running. And there's so many takeaways from yesterday. I know you guys just touched on it to close out that segment. I don't know. Some people view it. There's so many different ways that people are perceiving his approach to everything. Some people liked his confidence in the way he was speaking. Some people liked the aggressiveness in which he was speaking, the definitive nature in which he was speaking. But then, of course, if there wasn't that tweet last night or that X post last night from T. Higgins, it kind of makes you view everything a little bit differently. There's so many takeaways. I don't even know where to start. I'll just kind of throw it back to you guys. Yesterday was a good thing, right? I guess if we could just quickly summarize, was yesterday a success as far as the messaging from the front office and the Bengals?
First and foremost, I think it's the first time Duke Tobin said anything.
Yeah.
I mean, for years, he goes up to the podium and just says nonsense for 15 minutes, and we learn nothing. So whether you believe it or not, I really appreciate Duke Tobin firmly taking a stance, talking about his guys, talking about his offseason plan, where they plan to go, the money they plan to spend. Even last year at the Combine, when T. Higgins' tag was the top of the docket in terms of questions to be asked, he was very wishy-washy about a future extension. This year, obviously, the cap tweet late last night changed a lot of the feelings around that conversation, but he was gung-ho about re-signing T, keeping him in the offense, and talking about how great that fit is. So even outside of what was actually coming out of his mouth in terms of the quotes and agreeing with Joe Burrow, and all that stuff's great, but the fact that he actually stood up there and talked about a plan and said things, that means a lot to me, because we only hear from Duke Tobin once or twice a year. So the fact that he actually used this time to get a message across, it leads me to believe that either Joe Burrow's media tour worked, or Duke Tobin's going on his own right now to force the people that actually make these decisions, Troy and Katie Blackburn, to fork over the money he needs.
Yeah, I think that if anything, you should feel. I mean, up until the T. Higgins tweet last night, I felt very good about it.
It was a wonderful day.
It was a wonderful day up until the cap, but I don't know if we can now realistically expect T. Higgins to be a Bengal. I based on the tweet, I mean, I don't know what else I'm supposed to read into it. Clearly, that was about that. We have to obviously analyze an athlete's emoji that he used, and this is part of the new sport, the new era sports talk. That's something we got to talk about. But up until then, yeah, Jacob's right. Everything that he said gave Bengals fans confidence, and it at least showed that there was a plan in place, and the plan was in line with the fans' plan.
Right.
And we were all going in the same direction together. Again, there was something at the end of the day that ruined all that. But up until then, there was like a couple-hour window there where I felt very good.
The quote that jumped off the page to me to start it all off, it wasn't about T. Higgins or Jamar Chase or Trey Hendrickson or anything like that. It was Duke Tobin saying, everything our quarterback has said so far, I agree with. I want deals done, but I don't just want to pay more money for the same team we had last year. We have other needs, and I want to go after those needs as well. Some people initially jumped off the page there and said, oh, no, this means T and Jamar and Trey Hendrickson aren't coming back. I don't think that's the case. I think that quote to me reads, we want to retain our core and we want to add. These aren't mutually exclusive. I'm not just going to pay more for the same roster we have now. If I'm going to pay more for the roster, I'm going to pay more for the roster and get better across the board. So I didn't have the same knee-jerk reaction to that as I saw a lot of other people having, but I think that the awareness about the disappointment he had about last season, the need to add to the roster outside of these stars. He knows where this team's at right now, and he knows what it takes to get over the hump. We also have to remember that it's not Duke Tobin signing checks. If the Blackburns and Mike Brown don't want to fork over the money, it doesn't matter what Duke Tobin wants to get done. It doesn't matter what kind of negotiations he's willing to have. It can still come across as disrespectful, which he said they never want to try to do. But if your owners aren't willing to fork over the money that the other 31 teams are, then it certainly can come across that way. So I think it's tough to listen to Duke Tobin and take a full glimpse of what's going on in the Bengals front office just because it is so family-oriented. They don't give him a lot of control, and I would love to hear from the Blackburns, but this is as close as we get, and I think it was as good as you can really ask for.
Yeah, like we had a similar conversation, I think, last week when it came to Nick Kroll and Brad Meter, the general manager and president of baseball operations for the Reds, where a lot of people were beating up on Nick Kroll and Brad Meter and saying, man, they didn't go get that big power bat outfielder that they promised at the beginning of the offseason, that, you get a Terry Francona and you didn't really make any big splashes in the offseason. And the bottom line is, I'm like, well, they can only operate within the restrictions that are placed upon them by ownership. Like, I think if you sat, Nick Kroll down, Nick Kroll would love to go get the Shohei Otanis and the Vlad Guerrero Juniors and every big name that you could think of. Like, it's not like, these guys don't want to go get, these deals done and go get these players, but they're sitting there saying, well, here's the budget that was given to me. I have to go make this work. And I think that we forget about that sometimes. Like, that's why I get more angry at ownership than I do a general manager. Now, there's some general managers that have all the funds and all the resources possible. I think Cleveland, as Andrew Berry is a prime example. That guy has a very rich owner, and he doesn't place a lot of restrictions on Andrew Berry. You want a quarterback with a fully guaranteed contract, the first in NFL history, by all means, go ahead and do it. You want to continue rolling over contracts? Like, I'm going to be way more critical of Andrew Berry than I am of a Duke Tobin figure, because there are way more restrictions put in front of a Duke Tobin than Andrew Berry and some other guys around the league. So when it comes to Duke Tobin, what I can't tell is, and you brought up a good point, is he coming out and just saying everything he needs to say, hey, I agree with Joe Burrow. I want to get these deals done. I want to spend money. I don't just want to spend all this money on retaining guys from last year. I want to add and fix some of the deficiencies from last year. I think what we've made the mistake of, me included, has been that they're mutually exclusive. Well, if you spend money to retain these guys, you're not going to fix other problems on the team, or you don't bring these guys back and you fix issues on the around the team as well. I think what he's saying is, hey, we want to bring back T. Higgins. We want to take care of Jamar Chase, make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. We want to bring Trey Hendrickson back and put all our money on all the other deficiencies and holes that this team has as well. Again, he's saying all the right things, we think. We're going to get into the T. Higgins thing in a moment. But overall, you feel good about at least him putting it out there. Or is he, like you said, almost drawing a line saying, hey, I want to do this. Ownership, are you going to let me? That's going to be the big question mark, because it sounded good. It sounded like this is a team that's about to be aggressive. You wonder the motive. Like, you don't say that unless you feel like you can, right?
Right.
Like,
that's exactly my takeaway. I don't know why he would change how he sounds at the podium from the last few years when the same issues have been brought up if he didn't have a newfound confidence. There's no reason to go out there and say, we're going to extend these guys. We want to extend these guys. And he went on a 10-minute tirade about how great T. Higgins fits in the offense, not talking about numbers or cap or anything like that. I don't think that happens unless there's a somewhat of a level of confidence within Duke Tobin, within this front office, that they're going to be able to keep these guys around. Otherwise, he just would have went up there and said the same exact thing that he said all the time. There's only so many pieces of the pie. You can't split it up. Can't pay all these guys the top of their position. We've heard the talking points of a lack of confidence before. Those didn't come across yesterday. So I know the T. Higgins tweet has sent a lot of people into a spiral, but I'm still taking a general positive from yesterday's press conference with Duke Tobin.
Off the bench, Justin Kinner, Elliott Ruring, Jacob Tissett with you here, Casey McAllister. Casey, your takeaway too. Obviously, Duke Tobin had a lot to say yesterday, and it wasn't just regurgitated stuff from combine, media availabilities past. There was a lot. People noticed a ton of just how different he was at the podium. A lot more confident, a lot more forward. You feel confident from what you heard yesterday in regards to obviously getting Jamar taken care of, getting T and Hendrickson, and overall just fixing this roster.
My main takeaway from it was that he basically doubled up. He anteed up, and now all the cards are pretty much laid out on the table. If they don't get it done, it's the whole house is coming down, is basically how I feel. I mean, when you reiterate that you feel exactly the same way that Joe Burrow does, and then reinforce it by saying that Jamar is going to be the highest paid non-receiver in the league, or non-quarterback in the league, and then you're also saying that over the last couple of years that you've been trying to retain T. Higgins and that you want to give him a long-term extension and that you want to get Trey Hendrickson done and that you want to add to the team. It's all out there now. And if they don't follow through with these things, it's going to be hell to pay. Hell to pay from just the fans in general, from us, from the media. I mean, it will be an utter disaster because the clips are out there. And we can just pull it right there and say, well, this is what you said. This is what you said in February 25th. What happened? Right. And I think we all know that in the past, he's kind of slipped in there like, these negotiations are a two-way deal, right? They can only get over the line if both sides agree. He didn't really do that this time. He kind of was just like, yeah, we're going to get these things done. And I think that is a a step in the right direction, I would say, for most fans. He didn't leave that back door open. But now you got to follow through.
Yeah, for sure.
Actions speak louder than words. And I think that's the main takeaway that we have from this.
Yeah, the other thing about Tobin actually taking a stance is if they don't do what he's saying, the question that we've been asking for a while here might start to leave Cincinnati, and it's, what do you do? You're not the GM, you're the director of player personnel. And if you can't direct player personnel, then what is your job that you've had for 25 years? If you're saying you want to extend this core and you've been the GM of the Bengals for 25 years and then you don't have the ability to extend your stars, what is your job? You're just there to lick Mike Brown's shoes? Like, if you have a plan as the GM of the team and you're not allowed to execute it, then get a new GM. So I don't know what the main difference is here, why he's taking a stance if he doesn't have the utmost confidence that they can get it done, because it only makes him look worse. Another thing he said that's a big difference from the last couple years is he put a big emphasis on getting deals done early. He said with Chase being the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL and how much they would end up having to pay T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson, he said he wants those things in place to build out a football team. We've talked about over the last few years how the Bengals have pushed these contracts down the line, and it's made their job so much harder year in and year out. Even just a difference of a month or two in terms of these contracts could end up saving them millions and millions of dollars, especially with getting all the other pieces, knowing what you have to work with within the cap, within the cash, to build out the rest of the team. If he sticks to his word and gets these contracts done and gets them done early, this team's going to look very, very different next year and be in a much better place.
And I know you can't use hindsight. I get that, but this is like, if you got the Jamar, and he said that Jamar Chase changed his mind at some point last year. Whether or not that's true, I'll believe him as of this second. But, if you get that deal done, it's so much easier to sign T. Higgins right now. If you get T. Higgins' deal done several years ago, it's so much easier to get Jamar's and Trey back. Like, it's just, you wait until the last second, and it's going to kill you. That's what's happening right now with the Cincinnati Bengals. So I'm hoping that what Casey said's right, because like if your actions aren't going to match what you're saying, then you're worthless. It's worthless. Everything about this organization just doesn't matter, and the house will fall down. It will, because you can't just sit up there and promise things and not capitalize when you have the talent that the Bengals have. The Bengals, whether or not the national media or the national fans in the NFL want to say it, they have one of the best chances to win a Super Bowl every year. They do, because of Joe Burrow. That's a fact. And when you have that expectation and you don't capitalize and you still run your organization like you did in 1995, people are going to have issues with it. Now, I know they've taken steps. I understand that the organization is not the same as it was 25 years ago. I get all that. But I'm just saying, as of right now, you have a big opportunity to show not just the fans, not just the media, but you have an opportunity to show the people that are playing for you, the players in the locker room, that you're serious about winning, and that you can pay whoever, whenever, for the betterment of the team. It helps free agents. It's going to help everybody. Make Cincinnati a more desirable place.